Hello and welcome to episode 50 of, that's actually 10 that I just held up there, but 50 of Relics of Orr. Today I am joined by a great group of panelists. We've got Christian.
Hi.
Tiger's here as well.
Yay!
And we even managed to get Hunter from Hunter's Inside up here.
I'm waving, but you can't see me.
You can't, because you guys are seeing a map of Nova Scotia smiling at you. Because that's where Hunter is located generally.
Due to technical difficulties, we won't be revealing his identity.
Oh. Let's get right down to it. With we just learned recently that they released a Mac client for Guild Wars 2. Christian, I know you use Macs a lot. What do you think about that?
I thought, well, first off, awesome. Second off, why did we not hear about this earlier? It was just suddenly we woke up one morning and it was like, hey, have a Mac client. It's in beta. It's working. Surprise. So that was kind of interesting. I don't have it won't work on my MacBook because mine's a bit old and the hardware's not up to scratch. But I know of a couple of people who have picked up Guild Wars 2 purely because of this, and are even playing it on MacBook Airs, which are the netbook version of the MacBook. So that's pretty cool.
They didn't announce it. Were any of you expecting them to ever actually do Mac support?
Well, they never said no. They just said we don't have it. Yeah. They're like, we don't have it. We don't plan to have it on release. Honestly, the way they rolled it out, it gives me the impression that maybe things came together faster than they expected. But I don't know. They don't usually like to show us things until they are in some sort of working state.
Yeah, it could be. Could it be similar to the way they've been doing patches? Where instead of releasing patch notes and then patching, they patch it and then they release the patch notes?
Yeah, I suppose that's... I mean, don't tell us what you're giving us until you've actually given it to us, because then if you don't manage to give it to us, you'll hear bloody murder on the forums.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how they operated before the game was even out. They wouldn't release information on something until they said they had it in their demo version of the game and it was working. So
yeah.
Now that the game is out, when they've got something working, they can have it.
Yeah. So,
and of course, the follow-on from hearing all the Mac fanboys go crazy about Guild Wars 2 is that we'll have all the Linux people in the background going, "Where's our Linux client?"
Yeah.
Now with
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I lost my track, so you'd better go.
So with the possibility of a Linux client coming out, Linux tends to be a lot more freeform. So do you think that would affect that Linux would be maybe more of a security issue than just going with a Mac client due to the freeform nature of the operating system?
I have no idea. I haven't used Linux.
Think so. I mean, Linux is also Unix based, along with Macintosh. I mean, okay, I'm nowhere near an expert. I have not used Linux. I'm just peripherally aware of it. But as far as I know, it's just...
Well, while it is Unix based, the Mac client tends to be locked down a lot more than Linux. But speaking of security, they did release a blog post on security this week. Did you guys have a chance to read it?
No.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, go Christian.
Yeah.
You're such a good panelist.
Fill me in.
So what did they tell us?
It was really, really interesting. Mike O'Brien wrote it. He's one of the founders of ArenaNet, and he basically went through step by step and detailed what the deal is with hacking, how people are hacking your accounts, what ArenaNet is doing and has been doing to prevent this from happening, and how successful that's been as well, and how going forward you can make your account more secure. So, sort of to summarize it, the biggest way that people's accounts are being hacked is from other databases having been compromised, and the same email addresses and passwords being used across different games. So, say you use one email for everything, it's most likely that someone out there has that email address and knows that email address exists. And so what the hackers do is they have this massive list, and they just try different emails with different password combinations, randomly hoping that they'll get into an account. And what's even more interesting is that at ArenaNet's office, they're sitting there watching this happening, and they're seeing these, attempts happening. So they themselves are compiling a list of all the passwords that hackers have. And what they've done now is they've blacklisted all of those so that no one can use them anymore, so that you have to use a different password. And what Mike said was that after doing that, the rate of new accounts being hacked went from 1.5% to 0.1%.
That's amazing.
It's a huge difference.
So, Hunter, did you get a chance to read it?
Yeah, sorry, I'm sort of joining the conversation.
Yeah, we dropped you for a second there. Welcome back. So we're talking about the security update, as you probably heard from Christian.
Yeah, it's a very smart way of approaching the whole thing. Really.
What do you think about them using the Google authentication software?
Well, it's a cheap way for them to get two forms of authentication. But I'm not going to use it. It just doesn't seem necessary.
Does anyone else use authenticators for other games they've played?
I have the Blizzard authenticator, but that's just because I have a cell phone and it's free if you've got an Android or iOS device.
Right, because that was something that had been, I think, talked about or hinted at, was that with the smartphone app that ArenaNet was working on at some point, but then decided maybe not to, that there would be authentication with that. But it seems they've found that it's probably easier, cheaper, and perhaps quicker to use someone else's existing technology as opposed to making their own.
Yeah. I used authenticators for Rift and Relic and Star Wars: The Old Republic. I use an authenticator for Relics of Orr. No, I don't.
Bit of a slip there.
Oh, SWOTOR, also known as Sweater. And it was kind of I would occasionally get annoyed because I'd have to open up my phone, turn it on, look it up. Do you guys find authenticators to be fairly, inconvenient? Or do you prefer the security that they provide?
I like the security just because Blizzard accounts are such big targets. I picked it up when I started playing D3, and I haven't played D3 in months, so I remembered it was a little bit obnoxious to have to open the phone every time, but I'd rather have to do that than, I don't know. When the authenticators first came out, I absolutely hated them because I didn't have a smartphone, and the only way for me to get one was to pay for one. And I'm of the opinion that you buy the game, the company should be responsible enough for its own security that you should not have to pay for extra security on top of that. So I don't have as much of a problem. I don't have as much of a problem now that I do have a smartphone and I can get the free app. But if you don't have a smartphone, you're kind of SOL.
So does the Google Authenticator, does that download an app onto your computer? I haven't actually looked at it. Has anyone?
Me neither.
Anyone seen it?
No.
I'm rather curious about it. now that I hear you guys talking about it.
I'll look that
We
up
are
and
bad
get back to
panelists.
all of you guys. Oh, oh.
I-
What'd you guys think of the blacklisting of passwords that they were doing? That I've never heard of anyone doing that before.
Me neither. I think it's genius. I mean, if there's passwords that hackers are using to try most frequently, it makes sense to say, hey, guys, to basically tell a player, don't use this password because people will try it. You know, it's the same common sense where you want a capital letter, you want numbers, you'd like some unique characters so that people can't guess it. Don't use a...
Yeah, that's actually something else to maybe mention is that Ryan talked about this before and did a little PSA video, and Mike brings it up again, that XKCD comic, which talks about password security, which suggests using 4 random words and putting them together as being more secure than what we have been kind of taught in the past of kind of just generating a random string of letters and numbers together, because that's easier for brute force hacking than non-brute force. But obviously the main problem that Guild Wars 2 will be seeing is this list of passwords and emails out there as opposed to brute force, because I'm certain, I haven't tried, but I'm certain they have a limit to how many times you can try and access your account with the wrong password.
Now, Hunter, do you plan on changing your password at all? Because I know that they're going to blacklist any pre-used passwords. Or would you be inclined to do that, or are you thinking?
Well, I used a.
Oh,
I cannot understand a word you're saying.
Oh, am I buzzing? No. So, have you guys?
I'm just gonna disconnect.
Okay.
Reconnect, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, we'll get you back. Come back.
So what they're talking about doing is, at the moment, they're requesting everyone to change their password from the one they're currently using, and that will just be a complete blanket white slate to everyone having unique passwords. They are thinking of potentially making this compulsory for everyone to change their password from the one they're doing now, and blacklisting all the existing passwords in case, you know, there's a double up out there. Which is good for those people who have not used unique passwords, because it forces them to do so. But it means that for more conscious users who have unique passwords, they have to make another one, which isn't really a big deal, but is a little of annoyance that I've already done the right thing and now I need to do it again in a way. But
yeah. Well, it'll definitely cause some interesting changes. It'll be interesting to see how their security ends up working out for them. Along with the security, that's sort of been something that's been causing an uproar in the community itself, being as a lot of people, well, not a lot, but a fair number of people, a statistically significant number of people did get their accounts hacked. Now, another recent uproar was the monetization of podcasts and various other Guild Wars 2 related media, and whether or not it's allowed by ArenaNet. Are any of you familiar with sort of the uproar that went around that?
I read about it. I wasn't aware there was a huge drama fest over it, though.
So what'd you find out about it, Tiger?
Just pretty much what you linked. That someone posted up some videos, and YouTube gave them a little bit of a warning about it, and so they asked about it, and it was clarified.
Yeah. So,
I am generic.
You can follow the link in our show notes in order to read all about it.
Mm-hmm. I'm so tired.
Essentially what happened is someone posted on the forums about how you're not supposed to monetize anything from ArenaNet. And ArenaNet and a bunch of people had an argument about whether or not YouTube videos and that sort of thing with ads on them counted as fair use under the terms of service. Apparently it doesn't, but ArenaNet's policy is to not go after people for it unless something gets out of hand, I guess. I'm not entirely certain what would cause them to go after them. And Do you have any ideas?
Well, when I first saw the thread on the official forum, there was also one that it linked to on a different forum where this first came up, and I think it was one where people were discussing it was a PvP forum from memory. And so first off, ArenaNet kind of came back in reply and said quite strongly the monetization of their product is not allowed in the terms and use, which kind of indicates that if you have videos on YouTube, if you're doing series on YouTube, if you're trying to stream competitive PvP and you play ads during that time to earn a living, which is what a lot of pro esport players do these days, you are breaking the terms of use. However, they then came back in the official forums to clarify a bit further. Continued clarification that if you have an agreement with ArenaNet, then that's cool. And so that means there are a number of large gaming sites, news sites, high-profile YouTube channels perhaps as well, and that kind of thing, who have agreements with ArenaNet, which allows them to monetize the Guild Wars 2 content because ArenaNet feels they're getting something out of it in terms of advertising.
Yeah.
And then finally, Gail Gray came back again and kind of wanted to clarify, but it kind of made me think, well, what's the stance now, saying that while it is against the terms of the current content, basically while it's against the rules now, they're not going to go after people because they support the sharing of our experiences in games. So if it's a fan video, it's okay, you can put your ad on, which makes me think, well, where's the line?
I think go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a fuzzy line. They're probably saying technically this is against the terms of service, but we're going to take it on a case-by-case basis, and like if someone's obviously making hand over fist off of us, we're going to go after them. But if you need some ad space to offset hosting costs and you're contributing to the community, go for it. They can't come out and say that for legal reasons.
That's true. Yeah.
But
what are you going to say, Hunter?
I think a lot of the uproar was about people thinking that NCSoft or ArenaNet were actually going after people and flagging their videos, when really that was probably just YouTube's own flagging system, taking note of somebody's video and flagging it, and people just freaked out at ArenaNet and NCSoft.
Yeah, they do have. YouTube definitely has a fairly robust built-in flagging software that looks at patterns of audio and that sort of thing. I know that the music that we use from Moist, who you guys should check them out at moist.se, they have that we get flagged and usually have to submit we're actually okay to use this and here's the proof and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So they have fairly complex, now that they're owned by Google. Google generally likes creating fairly complex analytic software. So
they're robots.
Yeah, Google's
robots
just a bunch
keeping
of
you down, guys. It's not the man anymore. It's the robot.
Skynet. Well, that's going to do it for the news today. We're going to move on to a section about what we've been up to in game.
Yeah, let's talk about some Guild Wars.
All right, and we're back. We're going to be talking about what we've been up to in game. Tiger Feet is super excited about it because she's actually in game. And
I'm actually in game. It's wonderful.
So have you gotten past level 12?
I think I was level 18 when you made me stop playing to do this podcast. Mimi.
Okay, so you finally caught up to your character on your other account.
Yes. Real Tiger Feet has caught up to Tiger Feet in Exile.
What did you do with Tiger Feet in Exile?
I just left her there. What they did was they deactivated the collector's edition code on the new account, and they applied another code to my old account. So if I ever want to get that one back, I'm going to have to buy another collector's edition.
Oh.
not terribly likely, but I figured I'd leave the character there just because it's hilarious.
So what have you been doing? Where have you been leveling? And or even more specifically, what race and profession have you picked?
I'm working on my Char Engineer. That's going to be my main. And after that, I'm probably going to work on my my Silvaria Warrior. But right now it's Char Engineer because I love the Char zones. And I was really surprised when they released their like thing that showed who's doing what, that the Char are the most underplayed race. I didn't expect that. But that's fine by me because I like to be a super special, unique snowflake.
It turns out the world isn't full of furries after all.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that I'm playing an engineer, and engineer is one of the least popular professions as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of figured they might be, along with mesmers, just because they can be a bit trickier to get a handle on. I was going to say something I forgot.
Do you think it might be due to the lack of weapon swapping?
Potentially, that's what I was going to suggest. You hit level 7 and you get there and you go, I don't have another weapon. Okay, I'll go play something else then.
But initially, that makes engineer kind of more simple to learn in the beginning, but
that's true.
It's also lacks variety, so I think maybe that's why I don't get into it as much.
I don't know. I really, really like the engineer. It got to the point with the elementalist that if I stopped playing it for a while and tried to pick it back up, I wouldn't remember what all my skills did.
That's true.
All the different, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And then throw in the weapon swapping. I'm really kind of an old school gamer like that. I don't like 1,000,001 different buttons to push. Just give me 2 or 3 buttons and let me do a variety of things with just those tools. In Portal, you have blue portal, you have red portal, and everything follows from there.
Yeah, I do not use a whole lot of kits on my engineer, and it doesn't bother me at all. I just really love the pistols on the engineer for some reason, and that satisfies me throughout, from 1 to 80 pretty much. I have like 35,000 kills with pistols and like 27 with rifle.
See, it's the exact opposite with me. I'm in love with the rifle. I was telling Spirit the other day I need to compose an ode to how much I love jump shot.
I think everyone loves jump shot. Jump shot is just, it's wonderful. I love jump shot, and I don't even. My engineer is level 1 and still in the tutorial zone.
I actually don't like jump shot that much. It got nerfed a little bit.
Great, like kick Hunter from the call.
Yeah.
Don't like jump shot.
I don't want to hear this nonsense. Actually, I found out that the rifle and the flamethrower synergize very well together. Between the net shot and overcharge, which knocks you back, and the rifle and the fire flamethrowers, like backdraft, I think it's called, that pushes them back. It's really good for keeping mobs away from you.
Flamethrower is definitely one of my favorite kits because of that backdraft and the air blast. So you can like push people away, and then pull them in, and then.
Well, you can't pull them in anymore, can you? I thought it was just blind.
Haven't used it in a while.
Blind.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
since beta must have been. They changed it. Yeah. You don't pull them in anymore. It's just a blind. I think they might have changed the name of it.
Yeah, they did the same with the Guardian Hammer. I remember in beta that used to have a pull and knockback, so you could combo those two together, and now it's just got the knockback. So I think so a couple of weapons which had that kind of combination had the CC reduced a bit because of the extent to which you can bully people with that kind of stuff.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that was really fun, and that makes
The interesting thing about the flamethrower's knockback, though, is it puts whatever you're fighting in perfect range to get the max damage from the explosion of your fireball. I think it's skill number 2. I don't remember what it's called offhand. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. It's that glob of awesome exploding molten liquid.
Mm-hmm.
So how did they nerf jump shot? I haven't played my engineer since launch.
I think the initial launch does less damage.
Oh, right. I did notice that. When I was like attacking tents and something, I'd use a jump shot in one place, and I noticed that the damage decrease from the first is less than the second.
Now, did they change the arc of the jump itself, or is that still the same so that it can be wonderfully used to exploit jumping puzzles?
No, I think that's the same.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I would be sad.
No, I remember there was talk in the beta about jump shot being a bit overpowered because you could just jump in place and then get double the damage on something where it was intended. Huh?
Something I did quite often when I was using rifle.
Yeah. It wasn't intended to be used that way, so they had to figure out a way to make it not overpowered.
Minimum range. They did it with bows in that game that I'm not going to mention this week.
I don't know. I'm pretty happy with it because when I use jump shot, it's mostly as an initiator to attack something. I'll use my net shot to make sure they stay where they are, because there's nothing that frustrates me more than using jump shot and completely missing because the mob has wandered off.
So what's been keeping you busy, Shungaku?
I have been wandering around on Shungaku, just doing random stuff. We did Honor of the Waves this week, story mode, so I have 2 more dungeons left, and I will actually be finished with all the story mode dungeons. And one of the great things about that run was it was me, Nexi, Spirit Hunter, and
I was there.
Else was there? Okay, you were. Oh, right. Well, you've got the female. I was like, there was another girl there. But no, that was just your avatar was a girl, so I was thinking it was you. That's right.
Oh, I love it.
So we went in there, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. I also like the fact that we made color coordinated, like these horrific. Well, they actually weren't that ugly. Green, white, and gold outfits. I enjoyed that thoroughly.
That's my wedding colors.
It's a great color combo, actually. I've found. So that's what Shungaku. Well, Shungaku doesn't have the white anymore, but he's got green. So that was, and I've been doing auction house stuff. A lot of auction house stuff, which has not really got me that much money. So I've also been going around trying to just finish dailies, and I've been leveling up an elementalist who's like level 24 now, so not super aggressive. Yeah, cool.
What weapons do you use on your Ellie?
I have been switching between staff and then dagger focus.
Oh, I always went double daggers.
Double daggers is nice for just pure offense, but focus gives me some defensive abilities. And I am the problem is, having played Necro, I'm used to having, Death Shroud. So like temporary invincibility, wonderful thing. Elementalists don't have that. So I'm hitting my F1 button and going into Fire Attunement going, this is not helping me survive. This is not good.
Need to rebind F1 with F4 so that you switch into Earth Magic where you do have some invincibility skills.
I might have to do that. If only I could rearrange them on the actual on the interface, I would do that. So, but I've got regen on water, so generally what I just do is switch to water and start kiting like a maniac.
Yeah.
That works okay. So, and then I've also been doing like Relics of Orr editing and stuff, so haven't spent as much time in game as I would have liked. Hunter, what have you been up to?
Tons of different things, I guess. I got my engineer to 80 and been wandering around Kershore doing karma events, and got my leather working to 400 and made some exotic armor. Just various things.
Nice. Have you spent... Oh, go ahead, Christian.
We were running around Frostgorge Sound way up in the north, and one night, and I did Claw of Jormag for the first time, and Hunter was there as well. And then a couple of hours later, after I'd had dinner, he was back again. So we killed off the dragon a couple of times up there.
Nice. I think
I
I
haven't-
think it's on a 3-hour timer, as in every
think-
3 hours it happens. It's guaranteed.
I know
Awesome.
everyone talks about Tequatl being on that timer, and I don't know about the Shatterer. So yeah, I
Pretty
think
sure
that would
Torment,
make sense.
its claw is on the same timer.
Yeah, Jormag's Claw. I know that. I think all the dragon encounters that happen, open world dragon encounters, those are all on 3-hour timers to guarantee that people get access to them.
I wonder if things like the Obsidian Behemoth, is that what he was called? Is on the something
Shadow
similar?
Behemoth.
Shadow.
Shadow Behemoth, there we go.
Those aren't timers. They don't assault every time. Those are on
Yeah.
player trigger.
Oh, right. Right.
So there's 2 different ways to do meta events: player trigger and timer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was running around up there on my Mesmer doing map completion, and besides that, now I'm kind of in the final stages of map completion actually on my Mesmer, and I do a bit of that, and then I'll pop down into Orr, run around, do some karma, and then a dungeon here or there. I'm now only missing Ara in terms of story mode, and I'm going to do
Awesome.
that once I've finished up my personal story. So I get sort of the build up. I was kind of like that with going to Orr as well. I built up through the personal story before going to Orr, as opposed to just skipping down there once I hit 70. Yeah, it's been cool. I
Mhm.
also dabble in a thief on the side and get frustrated quite quickly.
Actually,
Because-
sorry.
No, go.
I've actually been holding off on doing my final personal story because it's rumored that the final reward is bugged and you'll get like level 50 blues and greens instead of level 80 gear for finishing it.
Oh,
My question
that
is:
would make me not so happy.
is that the Ara? Because I think Ara is technically your final story mission, but then there's also the other one with the thing that happens.
So there'll be, as far as I understand it, and obviously I haven't done it, so I don't know if it's true, but I figured there'll be a personal story quest which takes you into the zone with you know who, but is not
I
the same.
appreciate your discretion.
But it's not the same as
What could be?
doing the dungeon story mode, because that's separate. Because you can do that story mode any time.
The interesting thing is, I believe that what it is it's your final. So I did the final quest outside of Ara,
Yep.
and things happened, and people died, and some people lived, and I survived. Surprisingly, I was expecting my character to die, and then like re-roll, but that didn't happen.
Massive roll face.
I don't think I got. I guess I didn't. None of the rewards were really all that inspiring from that mission. But then my personal story switched, and now it says go kill Zaitan. That's like my final story thing on my storyline. So I still have a story quest, and it's right at the gates of Ara. So apparently I'm supposed to go kill Big Z, and so that might be the final rewards that I will get. I'm not entirely certain though.
Cool.
Well, there'll be, if that's the case, then I presume there'd be dungeon reward because you're doing the dungeon. And
I
then
think
quest reward separate because you complete the final quest. And you always, quest reward is always separate from
right.
anything else.
So what might happen is you kill Big Z, because spoiler alert, the big boss at the end
It's
of the
kind
game,
of-
you kill.
That's kind of the goal.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I remember when we were learning about the game, there was a possibility you don't even kill him.
That's true. Well,
Well, that's what everyone was discussing, because this is a big, massive dragon. Is it even possible to kill this thing?
Yeah.
And I was
Well-
always kind of thinking it'd be more likely that we just banish them for another 20,000 years, and then Guild Wars 3 comes around and we do it all again.
except in first-person shooter mode this time. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
space.
Battlefield
Hooray!
Tyria Charmageddon. It will happen.
Yes.
That's
I'm
actually
excited
the
to
secret
see
project. You know how they've got that room at the ArenaNet Studios that journalists will occasionally mention, that they say, it's not Guild Wars 2, we don't know what's in there. It's Battlefield Tyria Charmageddon, their first-person shooter set in modern technology era, where the Char have risen up and they're trying to kill everyone, and and it's open war between Char and humans again.
So we get to slaughter the Char again? Ah, sweet. I'm so in with that.
Well, but it's a capture point based sort of like battlefield, so you can play as a Char though, as well. So instead of this silly like terrorists and Americans that we always see in shooters, it's Char versus humans.
So it's still terrorists versus humans.
I'd totally be down.
The Char were there first.
I'm just winding everyone up.
Oh. So, ArenaNet, even if you're not working on that, yes,
you should be.
Oh.
So, seeing as I'm winding everyone
guys.
Up, is it time to move on into a bar brawl?
I think that we should. So, we're going to take a short break, and then Christian and I and Tiger and even Hunter will begin beating each other about the face with fisticuffs. After some incredibly aggressive trash talking, we're back and ready for our bar brawl. But first, we'd like to recommend that ArenaNet create steins for Guild Wars 2 steins so that we can have those for the bar brawl. Also, I think that people in Germany and various other places would be very willing to purchase them. Plus, with your art, I mean, yeah. So, this week, for the bar brawl, we're going to be discussing whether the issue of dungeon tokens and whether or not they should remain soulbound. I personally think that they should actually be able to be sold on the market. I think that they're one of the things that would actually create a diverse and something that's sort of a go-to for the market. It will be something that will be valuable since they are hard to get and there's so many of them required. I think it's a totally valid idea. What do you think, Christian?
Well, at the moment, the tokens are soulbound to make sure that the exotic armor at the end that you can get from a dungeon is only accessible to those who have personally completed that dungeon over and over again. So by putting it on the marketplace, anyone with enough gold is able to buy those exclusive dungeon skins.
Or cash to buy...
exactly.
To buy gems, to pay for gold, to buy the dungeon skins.
So, like we've had with the cultural armor, people could spend real money to get in-game gold through ArenaNet and then buy the dungeon skins. The reason I still don't think they should be soulbound though, because of the sheer number of tokens that are required. So if you want a full set of armor from one dungeon, I think I've mentioned before, it's roughly 1,380 tokens, which comes out at close to 50 runs. Now, personally, I am not going to go anywhere near that right now. None of the skins are enticing enough for me to sit down and do 50 runs on one toon, because that's the problem for me, is after about 5 or 10 runs, I'm going to know it in and out to a certain degree on my profession, how to do that dungeon, and I'm going to get bored.
I had no idea it was that much. I mean, I knew you had to do it multiple times, but I had no idea it was...
Once again, letting people who are time poor actually get those skins would be putting them on the market. What do you think, Hunter?
Well, going back to buying them for a second, if you go back to the original Guild Wars, you could buy the obsidian and the ectos, or the gems, or the torment stones, and get your exclusive armor that way. I think that in Guild Wars 2, just to play devil's advocate for a second, soulbound serves a purpose, and that purpose is making a certain set of armor hard to get, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of work, and there are plenty of other skins you can have. So, I mean, it makes it less special if you can get a set of armor that is one of the rarest sets in the game after like 3 weeks or a month or even 2 months. Taking like months and months and all that hard work to get certain skins and walk around and show that off, that's a big achievement, and a lot of players are after that sort of achievement.
That's actually a really good point with the Fish of Woe and Underworld armor, is that even though you could buy them, buy the materials, so the equivalent being, even though you could buy the dungeon tokens off someone else, the value of those tokens meant that it could take just as long to earn the money through farming to get those tokens as running the dungeons themselves, which is kind of that interesting compromise in a way. So Fish of Woe armor, the Fish of Woe Underworld armor from Guild Wars could take a year to get, even though you could buy the materials off other players.
What do you think, Tiger?
I kind of wish they were account bound as opposed to soul bound, because like Squirrel was saying, it'll take up to 50 runs on a single character to do it. But if you've got other characters you'd like to bring in for a different group dynamic or whatnot, if they're account bound, then only you can use them. And it still means that you've put in the work, you've put in the time. But if you want to run something a little bit different for a change, you can do that and still progress the character you want to. I think that's a really nice medium in between being able to do something different and still having it be special enough that people can see, well, they're running around in full Ascalon Catacombs gear. They must have played the heck out of that dungeon.
Now, the odd thing is that there's no exclusive skin for crafters. You could argue that the obsidian armor and those sorts of exclusive armors, were kind of your crafted end-game gear, although I guess every end-game gear set in Guild Wars 1 was crafted. For example, right now, my exotic chest piece that I crafted, because I'm really slow at crafting and I've only made that, is the same skin as a green that I got that dropped in Orr. And so do you think that maybe a counter would be to create exotic, exclusive exotic or legendary armors, perhaps?
I think there are. I don't know because I haven't done comparisons enough, but I found some recipes from killing the Claw of Jormag. That opens up a Karma vendor, and you can buy recipes off them for weapons. And they are exotic weapons which have a base item of another exotic weapon which drops, that you then combine with corrupted lodestones, I think. And I think what it does basically is it takes one exotic skin, a whole bunch of trophy type items, combine those two, and you get a new exotic skin. Now, I don't know if that's unique or not. It's just, that was really an interesting find for me.
It would be odd if it wasn't unique, because if it wasn't unique, transmutation stones would be a lot cheaper way to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that may be where the unique skins for crafters are.
Okay. So they're behind
Veils and Karma and a ton of lucky drops, basically. Okay. From what I could tell, seeing as the base weapon was a drop as opposed to one you could craft.
Interesting.
Well,
so in terms of the tokens, I'm kind of in the same mind frame as Tiger. The difference between account bound and soul bound, in terms of having to acquire it and the difficulty to acquire it, that I don't see a difference there. So I don't see why I should be made. The players should have to forego variety in their play. In terms of professions, I know you can get variety in terms of traits and builds, but there's still going to be a few builds that are best or most efficient for doing that dungeon, so you're unlikely to sort of get much variety on a single profession.
Another advantage of actually being able to sell the tokens would be that there are exclusive sigils and potions that you can use that actually make the dungeon easier once you have a certain number of those tokens. It seems odd that you'd want to spend those tokens on making the dungeon easier to run, rather being as they're fairly expensive, rather than saving them for your gear. If you're able to buy some of the tokens, you could buy those. Plus, you simultaneously have the issue of there's not a lot of in-game stuff where people are just going to be constantly buying X thing, except for maybe dyes. And so that might be able to create a in-game economy.
Are you talking about potions which increase damage to X mob?
Yes.
Artificers can make those.
But But certain ones I don't believe they can. Those artificers can make. Like I don't. Can artificers make the Flame Legion murdering potion?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, so there's a count.
I know they've
Different
dropped.
skins.
I'm trying to remember if I could make them or not, because I've only done a little bit in artificing. But
What was that, Hunter?
I was just wondering if maybe the percentage of damage might be different from the ones that drop to the ones you craft or something like that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think that I know that there are different qualities of them, so that may be.
yeah, so the higher level you are, the higher percentage you can craft into the potion. And I'm
Okay.
just going to have a quick look, so keep talking.
So, what kind of effect do you think it would have on the economy if you could sell tokens, Hunter?
I don't think it would be all that different. I don't think it would have a huge effect on the economy. It would be fairly similar to the original Guild Wars, really.
So, I do know that, for example, Citadel of Flame has a speed run that you can do, and they've been nerfing the rewards from that, although apparently they nerfed it too far. They nerfed it through the floor or some such. What do you think about having a dungeon where within a week people had full sets of armor and weapons from that dungeon?
It
Do you think that's an
probably,
issue, or
it probably needed to be nerfed. I mean,
I'm-
it just doesn't really sound fair. Sorry, Tiger.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, as a rule, I'm strongly against anything that cheapens the work someone put in to get something. Like this is probably a bit of elitism coming through, but if I put 20
Okay.
hours in to get this armor set, I want everybody else to have to put in the same amount of time that I did. And actually, I know that's a bit of elitism coming through.
I guess when I'm saying nerfed, I'm saying that the rewards were nerfed as opposed to the dungeon. The dungeon is actually now longer. They added some time onto the speed run
Mhm.
where you actually had to take longer at one point, and it was a forced lengthening. I think they added another minute or something onto this hold point.
Dear Lord, no, not a minute.
Yes. It was either 30
Ah.
seconds or a minute. They increased the length. You have to set a bomb gets set in this dungeon, and all of these Flame Legion are spawning, and they're spawning way too fast for you to kill them. And so the strategy has been run in a circle around the room like a bunch of little girls. Or little boys,
Sounds
or
about
just
right.
anyone who's terrified of things, which is, pretty much par for the course for me. So they've lengthened that now. So have you had a chance to run that speed run, Hunter?
I have. It's not. I don't know. I only did it like one or two times, so I wasn't really used to it yet. So it wasn't that fast for me.
Yeah.
We screwed up a few times, but it would. Yeah, if you spec for it and know what you're doing, it could be really, really fast. I could see why they didn't realize it was going to be such a speed run, but yeah, the nerf I think is probably justified.
I mean, at first the nerf was targeting the repeated runs that people were doing, so that if you
Right.
did consecutive runs, you would get reduced token rewards.
Right.
Then all it means is you need to alternate between two routes. So if you can get two routes down to be reasonably quick, then you're just as efficient as before. And I'm not sure what the rewards were nerfed with, but for ArenaNet, what they were saying is, we don't want you to repetitively do the same thing over and over. We've got a whole world of content out there, and we need people in it for it to work, which is kind of what I'm encountering a lot now. Rolling alts and running around different zones is, my server is now back to high population, but I think that's since they reduced the cap back down. There aren't many people outside of the sort of end game zones at the moment, because everyone's just farming karma or in dungeons, and or at least the vast majority of population is at that stage now. Being a month into game, there'll always be
Yeah.
new players and stuff, but
Like, I'm
lacks
running into a few people here and
population.
there, but it's nowhere near what it was on the pre-order, the head start.
And that's because
Now-
we've kind of shifted out of that main group of population, which has all just been progressing through the game together at the same rough rate. And
Yeah.
if you jump out of that, then suddenly there aren't as many people around, and events aren't as frequent, I guess.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things that I've been watching is something that they talked about on Guild Wars 2 Riches, is the surge of materials, and essentially just watching prices shift between as they leveled through X sections. And so people, I think the vast majority of players are finally at 80 now. What 3-4 weeks into
4
Guild
weeks.
Wars 2? 4 weeks in. So it took a month. It takes a month for a casual player to hit 80. It looks like, and that's really interesting because you could actually see it's like, okay, now I particularly look, because I'm a tailor, I look at the leather and I look at the cloth. And so you'd look at it and say, okay, so now jute's always been reasonably priced, which is interesting for someone selling jute, not for someone buying it's expensive. But then you saw wool have this weird like price shift as it just got dumped, and then cotton got dumped. Actually, wool and jute sort of stayed the same because of the issues with the trading post. But then you had the cotton shift, and then you had the linen shift, and then the silk shift, and then finally gossamer has dropped about 2 silver in price recently because they're just pouring it on.
I saw something interesting with that. Someone tweeted out their own track, keeping track of copper, iron, and I think the timber as well. And iron is cheaper than copper right now, even
Wow.
though it's a higher tier.
Oddly enough, it's always been cheaper than copper,
Okay, well, cool.
which is, it's kind of weird, but
It is more frequent, I find. I think,
Yeah.
in terms of the nodes.
I think it's like distributed over more zones than copper, probably.
yeah. So you run into it a lot more. And I think that it's actually used less than copper. I think copper actually covers a broader spectrum of numbers because I think it's 1 to 100, whereas I think
Okay.
iron is maybe 100 to 175, so it's only 75 as opposed to 100. That could just
That'd
be
do
me
it too.
being insane.
I know I'm level 50 and I'm still in my crafting and I'm still using copper.
Yeah, well, there
So.
you go. Wait, really? You're making level 50 items with copper?
No, my crafting is level 50.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that has been the bar brawl. We were not quite as brutal, but I will now punch Christian through the screen. Watch. Ah! There we go.
You got me.
He's on the other side of the world from me, so I just punched all the way through the earth. That is what you just saw, which is why he's
Excellent.
below me on the screen. I should actually probably have him turned upside down to make it proper. Okay.
Moving right along.
Moving right along, we'll be right back after a short break.
The sky will be blue.
I heard it's going to be produced by ArenaNet.
I heard you can use a keyboard with this
I
game.
heard you'll need a monitor to play this
I
game.
heard this game will work on Windows 7.
I heard that Norman really tall.
That's just speculation.
There's the possibility of them adding the Great Axe in because someone said, "Hey, can you add a Great Axe skin for great swords?" And ArenaNet, being the teasers that they are, said, "Well, we want to save some of the fun for later." So, what do you guys think? Do you think they might add new weapons in?
I think
Well,
it'd be
go
really
ahead.
interesting, definitely. Honestly, if they want to add more skills, that's probably the best way to do it, is to add some new weapons in an expansion as opposed to just loading up on utilities.
What do you think, Hunter?
Well, I think a great axe would be, it's sought after by a lot of players, and you would definitely have you would be inspired to have new skills that would be different from great sword or whatever. So a great axe would be a good addition.
My kind of thought with the addition of new weapons is do they add them to new professions exclusively, or do they add them to current professions? And if so, which professions get the new weapons? And then if you say, for example, a warrior gets a great axe in an expansion, got 5 new skills, that's kind of at risk of running into the problem that happened in Guild Wars, where the sheer number of, I know it's not the same scale, the sheer number of skills that were added meant that the pool of skills became very diluted. And I think because of the way they've built the professions around a small pool of weapons with a small pool of skills, each weapon feels like it has its own role, and it, people have an affinity with that weapon, and they go, this weapon works, it feels really good. And then if you start adding weapons into that, I'm not sure how well that would work with the current weapons and that kind of thing.
Power bleed is always going to be a danger when you've got expansions. It's really just a question of how they're going to play that. I mean, I honestly cannot imagine them making an expansion without offering something new for the classes that are already there. Because they might increase the level cap, and you're going to have skills and abilities up beyond that. They might have like new weapons that offer the new skills. I mean, of course, they'd have to make enough weapons or make them broad enough that everybody gets something new. But like, because if you're the kind of player that just has one character and that's all you want, and an expansion comes out and there's nothing new for your character to be able to do, I mean, what's the draw to play it? They want to pull in as many people as they can.
My thinking with that is, if you're happy with that one character and that one kind of play style, then you probably don't need anything new, because you've been happy doing that for the past, however many hours, that you'll be happy continuing to play in the same play style and experience the new content. Whereas if you're someone that jumps around on a lot of alts or switches weapons a lot, changes up their traits and that kind of thing, then a new weapon is great for you. Because you just want that new thing to try out and learn. And I do like that myself. Like, I like picking up new things and figuring out how they work. I just have that concern about the dilution of the current skill set.
Mm-hmm. And that's a danger, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
But as long as they're careful with it, and I believe they will be. I mean, they acknowledge that it was a problem in Guild Wars 1, so they're aware of it, at least.
For sure.
So if you could have one new weapon on your class, what would it be? Hunter, you've played a few different classes. What weapon would you like to see them add into the game?
Oh, that is really hard to say. So, I don't know, like a crossbow on the engineer would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it would.
And maybe if the crossbow fired, like, little bottles of elixirs or something, that might make sense as well. But I don't know, aside from that.
Crossbow would kind of also work quite well on the thief, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps, yeah. Or ranger.
Yeah. That actually could go on a lot of different professions. Crossbow would be very cool. Not sure if it would work on the casters. What do you think, Christian? You're playing Mesmer primarily. What would you like to see?
I'm not sure whether this is specific to Mesmer, but I kind of want whips.
Yes.
That would be interesting.
In the personal story for Savari, and also just in general, the Nightmare Court, occasionally you will be put in costume of a Nightmare Court, and your skills change, and you have these two Nightmare whips because you're in like a plant form, and they're really cool.
The Elementalist does have the
lightning whips.
Whips, which are very cool, and I could see a Necromancer using a whip.
Yeah.
To herd those minions of yours?
Yeah, to herd minions. That's has nothing to do with them being necromancers and just like, well, it would be a bleed weapon probably. You get lots of little spikes on it.
Yeah.
I was wondering, what would I go for on a necromancer? A whip would work. I'd like maybe to see a cesta make it into game. Like, if you remember those necromancer gloves that they could wear, the where they put them on in Guild Wars 1 and it was like a big metal glove. I think they called it a cesta. I could be completely wrong. That's happened before.
Grim cesta,
Yeah. I'd like to see something like that, although I'm not sure how different that would be visually than a focus.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. They can do a lot of things with the focus to give that visual aspect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Tiger, if you could have a weapon added into Guild Wars 2 for your characters, what would you think would be awesome?
I don't know how well it would work for the engineer, but I'd honestly like to see some pole arms.
Oh.
Kind of a
like maybe a spear.
Yeah, a spear or a bardish.
They actually have spears in the game. You're good. You can just go underwater and play with the spear.
This is like
you would use in a phalanx.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking of Soul Calibur, and there's a character there that always uses the polearm, and I always played her. I think it would be really neat. Some of the animations I've seen with the Elementalist and the staff, specifically with the Asura, just kind of almost dancing around on their staff. I'd love to see that with a more physical-based weapon as opposed to something purely magical, as the staff really is.
So, obviously, if you're going to have all these new weapons, you need some place to store them, and something that they've been talking about and players have been super excited about is guild halls. And I know that housing is something that they said they think will come out with guild halls, and apparently that's something in the works. What do you guys think is going to come along with those? Hunter?
WildStar. Sorry, I just jumped in. I just want to say,
housing.
Yeah, WildStar everyone's excited about the WildStar housing, and it's also like I could see them taking lessons that WildStar learned and applying them to Guild Wars 2. I know they're two different studios, but it's the same publisher, and there's a lot of cross-pollination that goes on in the games industry in general. So I'm hoping there's lessons
what
learned there.
What kind of things are they doing in WildStar that you would be keen to see in Guild Wars 2?
They've made this story that there's a planet that you can build your houses on, and they'll just lift up they lift up the land and it's floating. I think it would be neat to have something in the mists for housing, and maybe freeform districts so that you can see other houses off in the distance, maybe see what other people are doing.
While I think that is a good idea, I always thought that personal housing would probably be tied to your home district in your home city, but it's a good idea. I don't know.
From housing, I would like to see. I mean, the easiest thing to do is just to make it instanced for everybody, so that everybody goes to one door and you're in your own personal house. That would probably be the easiest, technologically speaking. But I would love. It is boring. I want to be able to walk down a street and see other people's houses and see what they're doing and maybe poke my head in and take a look. I'm reminded of Star Wars Galaxies and the system they had. Eventually, granted, it turned into a gigantic mess because the surfaces of everything was covered in people's houses. But
it was a wonderful mess.
It was, until you didn't load fast enough and then a house got dropped on you and you're stuck. And you need to say, hey, I need a GM because a house fell on me.
I don't have personal experience with housing, so I don't know the two variety, the instance versus open type thing, and they both sound really cool. Of those two, I kind of would like to see that personal home instance used because I have no reason to ever go there. I haven't been there outside of my personal story, and even when they say in the human storyline, for example, or actually in all the storylines, depending on which faction you're in, you'll help out one of the lesser races, and apparently they populate your personal instance. First of all, that quest for me got skipped because of weird blocking issues.
Same thing happened to me.
But other than that, actually, I still wouldn't. I still had no reason to encounter them in my personal instance because I wasn't forced to ever go visit it, and there's no benefit to me visiting it other than going, oh yeah, hey, look, there are those script that I apparently saved in my quest.
They have said on the forums that they are planning on expanding what the home instance does, so that could be the hint that they are going to go with it. What I would love though is a player city, and I think and they already have the lore to put it in the mists.
Yep.
And I've always loved the concept of sort of this jumbled together freeform city. If you've ever played Planescape Torment, the entire concept of Sigil, the City of Doors, where it's just in the middle of the primal existence and it's in the middle of the plains and just parts of plains get ripped off and show up in Sigil and they're like, hey, look, here's this entire new section of the city, and it's like a tower or this just random series of trees or forest or something, and so you have that in this city and it's just sort of randomly populating and chaotic. I've always thought that would be amazing if someone could do that in game, and if you gave players a plot of land in this massive player city in the mists and Guild Wars, and they just let them do whatever they want, build a farm, build like a quarry or something random, and then like a little house, and then people can walk through, and this would help build server community too, which I think ArenaNet theoretically wants to do. They've done a pretty good job with it with World War versus World, it seems, but I think that would build even more server community because you could see what the different people on your server are doing and interact with them, and maybe even create like guild districts built around guild halls, and then have those guild halls. And then when someone switches guilds, the house disappears from that section and pops up over at the other one.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice, kind of a nice in-between of what I would like to be able to tour other people's houses, is if they were tied in closely with the guild halls. You get a guild hall and maybe you can purchase upgrades for guild districts and have a certain number of house plots that your members can use.
A way to show favoritism. No. Go ahead, Hunter.
I always had this idea that if you were going to do player housing, like say in an area that is similar to Divinity's Reach, even though Divinity's Reach is fairly unique because it's a huge city, and how often does that get done in MMOs? But
not very.
But if you like put say a dozen different instance doors within the city, and then people could just pick out which house is their favorite and like use that as their house, it would still only be like 12 choices or something, but you could pick something out and use that, and I thought that would be much more natural than just having one specific place that everyone goes.
Yeah.
So if you wanted Codicus' penthouse, which he keeps in Divinity's Reach, you could go and knock on the door and steal it from him.
They're like, yo, this is mine now, here's the deed.
Or you can have a slum if you really want a slum. I remember my favorite place in Oblivion was the slum in Imperial City.
Did that have like hidden doors and such?
No, that was...
oh man, I'm a sucker for hidden doors.
I mean, the slum building would be, like a hole that connects to the sewer system, and then like your actual storage and everything is in the sewer system.
Yeah. That would be way cool.
Or into the catacombs that we know are underneath Divinity's Reach from the book.
We know they're there. How do we get into them?
Also, because there's a giant hole in 1/4 of or 1/6 of Divinity's Reach where they kind of just forgot about that and built something on top.
And you can't jump to your death down it. That makes me so sad. I don't even care if there's anything down there. Just let me launch myself off the edge, please.
I was really disappointed to find out that that big hole is where Cantha Town used to be.
Oh, that's really why there's no awesome Cantha architecture.
Exactly.
They got shafted.
They had Canthan architecture, didn't they? At one point?
Yeah, there's a screenshot of it, but they just destroyed Cantha Town and put that big hole in.
Do we know why?
They're racist.
Just because they wanted a big hole.
Or did they have some reason like
Well,
Oh
they
my
wanted to save-
goodness.
They wanted to save.
I'm
some of
sure
the
there's a
animals.
reason, and they'll tell us about it when it's time.
Sure.
Because that's... Huh. Well, maybe it's a hole that goes all the way through the Earth to Cantha.
Ooh. Oh man, that would be hilarious.
We're digging to Cantha, guys. Let's go.
You guys all thought that killing Zaitan would free up the oceans and you'd sail to Cantha? Ha! You jump into this hole.
Diggy diggy. Yes.
Oh no. Maybe.
I'll allow it.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do. ArenaNet generally surprises me with these sorts of things. Although, to be honest, I have played The Sims, and I really do like that sort of super custom housing thing. Also, I've played Dwarf Fortress, which also makes me like super custom designing things. And kind of crossing my fingers that we get like a plot that we can do whatever we want with. But
The one
I'm
thing
not expecting it.
I remember they said once, way long ago, about housing that if we were to do housing, we wanted to do it right. And because of that, we won't have it on release. So that makes me really hopeful that we'll get something just amazing when they do come out with it.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to hope for customization, but we'll see. One thing that I know a lot of people have been asking for in chat and on the forums is character recustomization. You guys,
Like a barbershop?
Like a barbershop or, full facial changing. How do you guys think they should go about allowing people to do this? Do you think the Guild Wars 1 method was sufficient, or do you think there's other options that are better?
I think the Guild Wars 1 method was just fine. I didn't think it was too expensive. I mean, right the way it is right now, you need to get your character the way you want, and that's it. You don't get anything. But having to pay gems to recustomize, I don't think that's unreasonable.
I actually do think the price was a bit much in Guild Wars. I mean, it was $10, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That
Was it?
seems
I thought it was
pretty
5.
expensive.
Was that
$10.
for the full makeover pack?
Yeah.
I think that would include a full sex change as well.
That's right.
And I think the purely editing, I think there was a cheaper one for $5, which meant you could edit 3 things, I think.
Well,
I don't recall. Anyway,
it seems stingy.
Yeah,
a lot of things in the Guild Wars 1 cash shop were priced on the higher end in terms of micro
Well, that was their only income, but it was also a reason why I never really bought any of that stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think I bought it once.
I like the Guild Wars 1 style, and it would be cool to have that because you get to a stage where you go, I really wish maybe I'd tweaked that slightly differently, and some people can get bugged by it quite a bit.
So what do you think about going with the about the way that the game that shall not be named, but the World of Warcraft, the way that they did it, where you could buy a character recustomization, or you could just go and for in-game gold get your hair changed. I know changing hair is not a huge thing, and I don't think a lot of people did it, but for RP purposes, and because I'm wandering around with the character with the same hair for a while, I'm like, I think they could use a different hairdo. As you can see, I used to have really long hair in real life, and now I have really short hair. I like randomly changing my character's hair. You guys?
Well, anything you sell in the gem store, you can buy with in-game gold. So if you were to split up the customization into, say, a haircut pack or a haircut token, and a makeover token, and like a full magic revitalization token where you change anything, you can then spread the price out. And for people who just want haircuts, they can buy the gems with in-game gold or with real gold, as in money in the real world.
Yeah.
Because I walk around with my gold doubloons.
Really?
Well, actually, the $1 and $2 coins in New Zealand are gold colored. They're not actual gold, but yeah.
Otherwise, you'd be sitting there with a knife, like shaving off a little flecks of it, like they had. There's a reason why the U.S. coins have little ridges on them, because at one point people were shaving them off in order to in order to get... Oh, see, you've got the ridge too, so you couldn't shave it off because they would know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Be like, oh, you're stealing our gold.
It's not real gold though. So.
What were you going to say, Hunter?
$8 gold colored as well. Well, I'm not the person to ask about character customization because, well, for instance, my engineer, I sped through the character customization just to get the name Hunter and still didn't get the name, but I still have the same generic face and hair that I started with, so I never bothered to go back and change it. But it would make a fairly good gold sink if you were just using gold to change it. If they want to do that.
That's true.
I do think massive things like gender change should be restricted to should be in the gem store though, not like just an in-game barber. I remember in WoW, I actually do remember when they came out with the barbershop. It was when they did the druid look update, because the big thing with the druids was now your fur color when you were in one of your feral forms was dependent on what your hair color was, and some people might not have liked the form color that they were given with the hair color they had chosen, so they also introduced the option to change that pretty easily.
I did change my cow druid's fur so that he actually had so he went albino at that point because I was like, yeah, white cat. Now there's another way. Have any of you guys played Vindictus or any of the Nexon games?
Oh, I touched it, but I didn't get very deep.
Okay, if you want some of the most hilarious.
I'm sorry.
Do I need to gacky you guys?
Maybe.
Oh Lord, bringing you innuendo every week. So, anyways, I played Vindictus. If you haven't played it, it's a pretty good game, and the actual writing and dialogue is pretty hilarious. In fact, the characters grow on you, which is unusual for an MMO. I mean, I'm still waiting for Logan Thackeray to go off and do whatever he does. Although now he's group hugging everyone, so that's kind of annoying.
Logan's dumb anyway, so
yeah, he is.
Moving on.
Anyways, moving on before I do spoilers.
Yes.
So the way they did the appearance options is you could actually rent certain appearance features to your character for like 30 days, and then a bunch of people yelled at them on the forums and said this is dumb, and then they added a permanent buy option. But what you could do then is you could buy like a hair for your character and then choose which hair you would display because you'd bought the permanent hair, so you'd have like 3 or 4 different permanent hairs. So you'd be able to pick from a certain subsection at character creation, and then there was that hair that you could choose from to add on, or you could actually pick some extras that they had added on that were maybe a little fancier on top of that. And so then you could pick and choose which one you wanted. What do you think of that sort of system?
So kind of like purchasing
Champions.
some presets.
It's kind of like champions with buying skins for your character. Or, champions? Champions Online.
Champions Online, yeah.
Yes.
That kind of reminds.
Costume pieces.
Yeah, costume pieces.
I was thinking League of Legends for some reason.
Yeah, that sounds good. It gives you, I guess the only real way to decide on whether or not to do that is how you're monetizing it. Whether you expect people to be recustomizing their character frequently, and therefore you want to be getting money every time they do that, or if you're happy to let them change it once and give them the option to flip between the original and their new version, which sounds cool to me.
I don't know. Yeah. That's just not the sort of thing that I want to see monetized. Character creation is just so integral to your experience when you're playing. So to hold back hairstyles or whatever, and some people go in and can't find even one hairstyle that they really like, so they choose something they're okay with, and to feel like you're forcing people in the money shop early, for me, it just seems wrong.
What I was thinking was implied was that you have all the options there at the start, and then you pick the one you want.
Yeah.
Say you change your
switch
mind in a
between.
week, you can buy one of the other ones, which you can then switch between.
Yeah, Nexon doesn't do it that
Oh.
way. They actually give you a limited set at the front,
Okay.
and then they force you into the cash shop, essentially, if you don't like any of those hairstyles. I would assume that ArenaNet would be like, unlike Nexon, even though Nexon does own like a 14 or 15% interest, 14.7% interest in NC Soft.
Mhm.
So, that could be interesting.
That's
But-
publisher versus developer.
Yeah, that's publisher versus developer. So that's. But anyways, so what you might see is going with, you give them all the options at the beginning, but then if they want maybe change the hair color or something, they can buy, or change the hairstyle, you just buy the new hairstyle, and then you can switch it in and out on the hero panel.
Yep.
Now,
I'd honestly just rather see them monetize the change itself. Like, maybe if I want a new hairstyle, it's 50 gems or whatever. Something cheap, and the more maybe there's a scale. Maybe you go to the person who does this, and as you're working, depending on how many changes you want, the price increases
Or
up
you
to a certain cap.
Or the other thing is, if you make it cheap enough, then people will potentially do it frequently enough that you're still, earning a good income off that, versus the big one lump payment for changing it once.
Yeah.
while we're
Something
on
nice that we might like to see at
Yeah.
some point.
That would be nice. While we're on that, one last thing. Nexon actually, so in Guild Wars, as you take armor damage, eventually armor breaks and that piece disappears. Would you be interested in getting maybe a more covering undergarments for your character, so that when the armor breaks, you could actually not be running around in your skivvies?
I think it's hilarious running around with nothing on, and I love it. I mean, I wish I could fight in my town clothes so that I can just run around with next to nothing on as my characters.
Or
What
you
was
could
that,
roll
Hunter?
a scholar and wear next to nothing anyway.
Well, not a man.
Yeah.
If we're talking about a cash shop item that would be like an undergarment, then we could just buy an instant repair kit instead, and that would fix your problem.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
But do you want to use an instant? No, yeah, I was just going to say, do you want to use an instant repair kit on one piece of broken armor? But that really, yes, you do. What I was thinking
Yeah.
was the undergarment thing. Doesn't that incentivize you then to not worry about actually losing armor, because it's okay, you still look reasonably okay because you've still got clothes on?
Yes.
So by giving people better undergarments, you're kind of saying it's okay if you lose all your clothes, you still look good, but you're going to be one shot from now on. So
But looking good is what's important anyways.
Of course.
Maybe not. I don't know.
What
do
kind
re-
of undergarments would you wear aside from boxers anyway? I mean, like a nightgown? I mean,
Borat bikini thong thing.
Long underwear. Because my character gets cold. Or you can get
long johns and stripy thermal underwear.
there you go, pajamas.
guns,
All
yeah.
your armor breaks and you're in pajamas with a little nightcap.
Actually, pajamas for town clothes would be cool. I'd consider buying those, because then you can
One
have
of those-
slumber parties.
one of those long johns with the butt flap. That
Yes!
Classic.
Footy
Oh, my
pajamas.
goodness. I may have had those as a small child in Alaska. They're warm.
I had those as a
Oh,
small child, and I wasn't in Alaska. So what does that say?
I don't know. It was cold where you were.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on that bombshell, I think we should be closing it out. If you want to send us an email, questions or comments, we'd love to start up a mail section. So go ahead and feel free to send your emails to relicsoforr@gmail.com. Also, if you'd like to send any sort of user-created submissions, such as fan art, cosplay, fan fiction, or a really cool website, send that to relicsoforr@gmail.com with the headline Tapestries of War submissions, and we'll try and highlight that on Tapestries of War. See you next week. or the week after that, or whenever we record another episode. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace out.
To save the night, I close my eyes and drift away. Another time, another place holds me. Everything is withering around me, but deep inside of me, the change has come.